top half of the leaderboard, and Fausti is still there at 4. And without any break at all, we are into round 8. And I think every game matters. And I'm not just saying that because I want you to stay tuned in. Literally every game has a leader playing in it.
Yeah, definitely. And as you say, there are 3 games remaining. So even someone like Rio, who's on 3 points, with 3 wins, he could suddenly find himself in a tiebreak, fighting for those coveted 2 spots that gets us into tomorrow's semi-finals. So let's take a look. Where do we want to go to, Mike? There is action happening. I'm seeing in Megan game. Andy has got the bishop out to h3. Won't stay there for too long. The bishop does need to move, but that's looking very interesting. Also between Mendes and Tani, that one is a little bit more developed, but it's going to be whether White's control over the c-line will offset the structural weakness of the d-pawn, and then we have I wouldn't say chaos, but I would just say tension between Faustino and Ryo Chen.
I could go anywhere, but let's go right to the middle of the screen. I'd love to see some Aaron Mendes versus Tani Adewumi action. We're jumping right to the middle. There are a ton of pieces on the queen side, but Tani has been at the top of the tables for most of the day, so it feels natural to take a look at one more of his games. And after knight c4, Tani's queen's in danger, so he makes a trade. And I generally was told, and I'm not sure if this is actually proper advice, but when you're playing with the isolated queen pawn, you want to keep at least 3 minor pieces on the board because you want to be the attacker. Look at how few minor pieces are on the board. The more trades that happen, the more that pawn becomes a liability. And one of the number 1 rules that I teach is an isolated queen pawn loves to push. So physically blockading with the piece is the way to go. I could see White throwing this pawn up the board even as a sacrifice and after takes, putting both rooks on the d file to try to win it back. So we'll see if any of those ideas are in play here. But notice that Black is not physically blockading the pawn. And you can see White's not hiding the intentions. White's going to play d5 if he gets the chance.
Yes. And one of the things that is in White's favor is that White does have control over the c-line, and usually that's enough to kind of hold the balance. So if you're able to post up a rook to c7, you can also jettison the pawn on d4. But Aaron has gone for defense, holding on to that pawn. But I agree with you. I think what we're going to be seeing is White grimly holding on. And unfortunately, I feel like this is perhaps a step towards passivity. And this is going to definitely be favoring Tani, who is currently in the lead with 5 points.
He absolutely is in the lead. And that means that, when you start to get a big number, you start thinking about, okay, how many more do I need to qualify? And just a reminder that if you get to 6.5, you're almost certainly going to qualify. It's not a guarantee. 7 is basically a guarantee. If you get to 5.5 for 6, you are really rolling the dice because the tie breaks could end up not going your way. But Tani's already on 5. So he may think, a draw is Black. Actually, 3 draws almost certainly gets him in, would be my guess. Probably no worse than actually a physical tiebreak, a 3+1 tiebreak. So he may already starting to be thinking about the number that he needs. But again, we've had so few draws today that it's not even, it's not likely unless the draw gods somehow wake up.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to be seeing too many draws. I mean, we've started as we mean to continue, and that is with decisive games all round. And he's been offered a trade of queens. He decides, no, it was tempting, I got to say, to trade of queens and then blockade the pawn and then try to take control over the c-line. But why not actually keep as much material on the board as possible and just keep on asking the question to White? Because if the queen just moves, White is going to have to spend some time now thinking, what is the plan? What is the threat? And you can trade off queens at a later time, perhaps when White doesn't have too much time and there can be more critical problems to solve. And here as White, you probably don't want to be taking that knight. Because if you take that knight, then again, the plan is very, very clear. You just triple on the D line, and then eventually you'll be going E5.
Yeah, and only Black can play for an advantage in such a position. Interestingly, they're both playing a little bit of cat and mouse, and a draw is not the worst result in the world for Aaron either. So I'm not saying that they're angling for a draw, but neither player may try to press this position. I wouldn't be surprised if the queen stayed on the board. But, if you move your queen back, black could get a little frisky with this move, knight to f4, threatening mate, threatening the queen, putting a little bit of an idea of knight takes h3 one day. So it's not like the queens are just automatically going to toggle. In fact, this is a tough position to play in blitz because both players, I'm sure, are aware that black is better. And so white is constantly having to wonder about how to defend this pawn. And that takes time on your clock. It takes stress too. So he goes ahead and trades queens because knight f4 was a problem. g3 stops knight f4. But now how to make progress. The knight's going to reroute to f5. And white's going to try to push that pawn in case of knight f5.
Yeah, and this is one of those positions, where you involve everyone into the attack. You can reroute the knight to f5, and the king can actually go to f6, e7, maybe try to come up to d6, act as a blockader. You can also do what Tani's doing. This is a great strategy. Take control of the c line, and now here you do not capture the pawn on d5. Instead, you just let that tension simmer for one more move and until you bring in the reinforcements. If you go d6, well, unfortunately, you're going to lose a pawn because knight to f5 happens. Okay, now knight to f5, and Tani has picked up material.
And I can report we're going to stay here, but Fausti was able to beat, I believe, Rayo, and that actually vaults Fausti back up into a tie for first. So real big logjam here, but black is playing for a win now. And after knight c4, the king has to go back. But if the rooks trade, can you take on b2? You might self-trap your own knight. Knight takes b2, queen c2, and you would self-trap. So the knight wisely goes back. But the knight versus bishop ending is very good for black because some of these pawns, they're on light squares. They're going to get targeted by the knight. Knight f4 coming.
Yeah, knight f4, it is on tap. It's coming to the cinemas. And now I was actually expecting the king to actually centralize and make a dash for the queen side. And this is perfect strategy. You see, perfect control. There's no way that Tani is actually giving white any chance for anything like h4, any attack on the pawn. We're seeing some hesitation. The knight jumps into d4. Now comes e5. It's going to be followed by e4, e3, and white is slowly going to get pushed back.
And Andy just beat Megan, which means Andy vaults to 5 points. We currently have a three-way tie for 5, but Tani is trying to break that tie here, and I don't see any reason why it won't happen. He's got a lot more time. He's got an extra queen, and he's about to give checkmate. It's mate in 1. Aaron has to throw in the towel. Actually, he actually plays all the way to mate. Okay, and so Tani, up to 6 points, is in the driver's seat, but he's going to be followed very closely by Fausti